My name is Bill Perry. I'm a nurse coordinator for the Artificial Heart program at Salt Lake City. The reason why I came up to do this training today is we are discharging a patient back to the Middleton area. Yesterday I went and trained the St. Al's campus in Nampa, and then today I'm here. This is for total artificial heart technology, allowing a patient that has complete biventricular failure to live out in the community. It's different than a left ventricular assist device therapy, where those are smaller internal pumps and they carry around smaller equipment. And this is actually, as you'll see here as we do hands-on demonstration, this is actually what's inside the patient. Okay? This is actually the same technology that was used in 1982 with Barney Clark, only at that time there was not smaller air compressors to allow the patient to be able to go out and live in the community. So probably to my knowledge, there's probably never been a patient that's lived in Idaho or Montana or anywhere like that that has this, that lives out in the community. Okay? So this is, as you can see, is a complete where we actually just leave a little bit of the atriums to be able to sew the pumps on. So this is a total artificial heart. As you can see here, we'll actually pass these along for you. You guys can look at those. And this graph goes on those. So it's basically has a polyurethane blood sac inside, right here like this, and it fills the chamber with blood. It sucks the blood down with the air compressor and then ejects it out. Okay? They have 4 mechanical valves inside, two on the right ventricle and 2 on the left ventricle for inflow and outflow purposes. Okay? The ventricle itself has 70 cc's of volume, and it's color coded, red being the left side of the heart, right meaning the red meaning the left side of the heart, blue meaning the right side of the heart. Okay? This is what the difference is between a total artificial heart and an LVAD. Okay? The current technology now is we have smaller pumps that basically are like this, versus this is now has 2 air hoses that come outside the body. And as you can see here, the controller here is much smaller than this. These air compressors, what we call the Freedom Driver. Okay. The differences between the two technologies: the total artificial heart replaces both ventricles. The cardiac output is totally dependent. It's pulsatile. The patient's blood pressure can be taken with any kind of a cuff. There is no EKG. We take out any what electrical activity there is when we implant these types of pumps. There's obviously no CPR with this, because this does not contract like a heart or even a pump connected to a ventricle. Okay? The LVAD, the patient is just an assist device. Okay? It's non-pulsatile, it's continuous flow. The blood pressures are hard to get. They have their own native EKG, and you can do CPR on these patients. Okay? The proper function of the total artificial heart is, the way this therapy works is actually we do a partial fill of the ventricle and a full eject. And the reason why we do that with this device is so that we actually will be able to have complete washout of the ventricle each time. These patients are on blood thinners, but because they have 4 mechanical valves, they want to make sure that there's complete washout every time. Okay? So we like to have the ventricle about 50 to 60 cc's of blood volume, and you can actually see that when we hook this up and do hands-on. Okay? We do partial fill, and you can see here this just demonstrates the blood sac. Instead of it being all the way filled up, you can actually just kind of dimple that, and that would be about 50 cc's. I'll let you guys look at that. Okay? How to identify filling. When you identify the filling on the Freedom Driver, you'll actually, when we turn this on, you'll see how fast the driver runs, and that's actually the patient's heart rate. Okay? It can be adjusted with special tools that we have, but we normally have patients' heart rate around 126 to 130. Okay? Full eject. Okay? Optimal washing of the ventricles. Okay? And how you get cardiac output is really simple. You take the heart rate times the fill volume, and that's your cardiac output. Okay? Now on this device, it only does the cardiac output on the left ventricle, and the right ventricle, it just kind of does its own thing with the device itself. So whatever you're measuring is actually the cardiac output on the left ventricle, but it really doesn't matter because it's running both ventricles. So, okay. The Freedom Driver system is, that's kind of a fancy word. It's basically an air compressor, but here they call it a multi-component electrical mechanical unit. It's an air compressor. Obviously the engineers came up with that term. Okay, it's an air compressor that runs on batteries, and you can plug it into a car charger and a wall outlet, as we'll go over with hands-on. Okay, as you can see here, the Freedom Driver itself is connected to the patient right behind his hand. Okay, and when we do hands-on, you'll actually be able to switch these ventricles over and be able to, be able to do everything you need to do. Okay. The pumps itself, as you can see here, they have velour that comes down on that plastic tubing from the ventricles. Okay, that velour is just like an LVAD drive line. It'll actually incorporate to the skin. Okay, and they can do a once-a-day dressing change just like an LVAD does, only now they have two tubes that come out of their body. Okay. I wouldn't say it's highly portable. It's portable because this is pretty heavy. It weighs about 13 pounds. Well, maybe 10, but it's pretty heavy. Okay, but allows the patients to get out of the hospital. Before this was approved by the FDA, the patients were stuck in the hospital for the remainder of their lives or until they got a heart transplant. Now there actually is a clinical trial for destination therapy for this type of device, so that patients can actually live on this forever. And there's actually been several patients in Europe that are going on anywhere from 5 to 10 years with the Freedom Driver technology. Yeah, so if you Google Freedom Driver, you'll see a European guy riding a bike and all kinds of crazy stuff. So. Okay, so I guess it's highly portable if you're riding a bike and got an air compressor. Okay, the components of the system itself is what they call the Freedom Driver. It has these onboard batteries. Okay, the set dial on the back of the screwdriver is right here. Okay, you take out this screw and then you can undo another screw behind there to adjust the patient's heart rate. Okay. All right. Obviously we don't give the patient that tool because he would be going up and down on his heart rate. We try to maintain a specific heart rate all the time. Okay. They have this adapter for the car adapter and the wall adapters. They're all the same adapter, and then including into their battery charging. And it's basically, it only goes in one way. You just line it up. Okay, they all have the same end. Okay, so they have a car adapter or a wall adapter, okay, they have a filter in the front that actually they will take this filter off and clean it and rinse it once a week to prevent any dust building up in there. Okay, and then as you can see, that's connected to those pumps, and that's how it runs. Okay. All right. These have quick connects on the ends here that allow the patient or the caregiver and clinicians to be able to easily snap these off and on. Okay, and we'll do that with hands-on as we get to do that. Okay. They normally put a zip tie right through where that little silver button is there, and that way it doesn't accidentally get pushed down and pulled out. All right. The next slide is kind of a busy, really slide, but it basically shows you all the different components in detail. Okay. This side over here, as you can see here, this side can be taken off and replaced if needed. And basically it's this thing here. Hope I can get it back on. Yeah, that just slides on there. So if this part ever breaks, it can be changed out. Okay, but that allows the wall plug-in to plug in and run power. Okay, on top you'll see where the batteries go. You can press this little gray button here, and that will actually give you the heart rate, the fill volume, or any alarms that'll happen. Okay. The fuel gauges on the batteries, you just press and hold this button right here, and that lights up the fuel gauge. Okay. It has 5 bars on each one. Okay. It will give you, there's a little light in the middle that alarms. Okay. And you can go over the alarms. You guys should have a handout that looks like this. You guys get those? Yeah. Okay. The good news about this technology, did everybody get all 4 pieces of paper? Okay. The good news about this technology, or the frustrating part, whatever you want to call it, is that once it alarms and triggers an alarm, you can't reset it. You have to change out the driver sometimes in order to resolve the alarm. So the FDA allowed it so that you have to come in and have the clinician change out the alarm and let it scream for a little while. It will still keep running, but in order to resolve the fault alarm, it'll actually trigger it. Okay? This just tells you the different alarms right here. Okay. The left battery alarm indicator, if it gets low, will flash up here. The right one on the other side. If the temperature or fault alarm goes off, okay, that's that middle one, okay, it will flash red or yellow in there. Now, if the temperature alarm goes off, it's relatively simple. You just let it cool down. If it doesn't resolve itself, it will then go to a fault alarm, and once it goes to a fault alarm, the patient has to change out the driver. Okay, because it won't resolve itself. It triggers it to a permanent deafening sound. Okay? And then as you can see here is the rate, the fill volume, and the cardiac output. Do you guys have any questions so far? Issues, concerns? Okay. Kind of scary? Or no? Okay. Okay. This just shows you another picture of the batteries. Okay. Pretty simple. The lower the battery lights, the lower the battery charge. Okay. To remove or insert the batteries, these have to be pushed in, and you have to push this button down. These yellow batteries that are in there are how we turn off the drivers. And in order to start the driver, you have to insert one battery and then take the other one out. Okay, and we'll do that when we do hands-on. Okay. Supplying external power is relatively simple. You take that plug in, you put it green to green. So it's not a lot of explanation with that. Okay? All right, transporting. The patients can fly if needed. Okay? Just be careful when you're transporting the patient. Make sure you don't accidentally cut the tubing. That's kind of simple. But it's not huge pressure. It's not like a spacesuit. Has anybody seen Martian? Mm-hmm. Movie Martian? Okay, where he put duct tape over his space shield so he kept losing air. Well, you could apply duct tape to that if needed because it will hold the pressure, but it won't stay there permanently. But in case the patient nicked this or got it caught in a car door or whatever they were doing, okay, it's pretty thick tubing though, so you'd have to get a pretty heavy duty pair of shears. Okay? Have the patient make sure they have a backup driver with them at all times if they're getting transported. Okay? No chest compression, obviously no cardioversion because you can't cardiovert them. There's no EKG. Okay? You can use pressors with caution. Okay, so the deal is if the patient is septic looking and his cardiac output and his fill volume's low and you're trying to get his blood pressure up, okay, you can use pressins, but you want to keep their systolic less than 130, okay? What happens is if the systolic gets high, then the fill volume, the compressor can't work as hard, and it will actually revert back to a complete fill, and then it will trigger low fill volumes and then low cardiac output. So just use pressors with cautions. Anything that affects the heart rate with emergency medications won't work, obviously, okay, because there's no heart in there, okay? All right, no central lines or PICC lines, and that's due to the fact that once this goes up in here, we don't want this to easily slide the line into an entrapment mechanical valve. So that's usually not good. It actually happened on an early implant a couple decades ago. Okay? Obviously, key concepts are assess the patient's level of consciousness, look at the drive lines, ensure the patient is connected securely, okay, assess blood pressure, okay, and I need to change this actually, so it should be 120. We target around 120. Or actually, I did move that. It's less than 130. Sorry, that's fine. Less than 130. Anything 130 or above, try to get it down. Okay.
How would you comment on how you?
Oh, you could use afterload medications. Nicotinamide, nitro, whatever you got to bring the blood pressure down. Just beta blockers won't work, obviously. Okay? Okay? You can intubate if necessary. I need to fix that slide, sorry. Never give vasopressors, but use vasopressors with caution. And then vasodilators, and sometimes we actually send the patient out with some sublingual nitro or something like that, so that if their blood pressure does get out of control, we can actually bring it down quickly. Okay? Okay, the patients are anticoagulated. They are on a full aspirin and Coumadin. Our INR goals are 1 to 3 or 2 to 3. So we used to do double antiplatelets, and now we just use aspirin and warfarin for our anticoagulation.
The newer anticoagulants are not.
No. We don't usually try to use those for any type of mechanical device because we don't have anything to reverse it. Yeah. Yet. I'm sure that's coming down the pipe.
Yeah.
Okay. Equipment. Make sure they have 2 onboard batteries. It will alarm, obviously, if it only has 1, so you don't need to worry about that. There are no manual hand pumps that fit on those. So it doesn't. You just got to switch the driver. Okay. All right. What to take to the hospital? They have an accessory kit that has their backup driver, their screwdriver, and the wire cutters to cut the zip ties, which we'll show you here. And that's what the accessory bag looks like. Okay. The types of alarms, like I said, there's a battery alarm when the batteries get low. There's a temperature alarm, okay, and there's a fault alarm, okay. Each alarm indicated, it's easy, it says screaming at you. You can't ignore the alarms because there's no way to mute them. So, and obviously when you have total heart support, it's got to be resolved quickly because it doesn't keep going. Okay? All right. Now, if the batteries get too low, okay, it will trigger a fault alarm. And the only way to resolve the fault alarm is to change the driver. Our patients already found that out. Okay? You can't let the batteries go too low because it'll beep at you, and if you ignore it, then it will trigger the fault alarm, and then the fault alarm, the only way to resolve the fault alarm, he tried to test out the system. Oh, I don't need to change my battery yet. Well, when it beeps and says change batteries, you need to change the battery. Okay? All right, temperature alarm. The internal temperature of the Freedom driver may be too hot or too cold. Okay? Or the batteries may be too hot or too cold. Okay? Just move it to a cooler or warmer area. Okay, check the filter, make sure that the filter's clean, and that's pretty simple. Okay, fault alarm is a constant red alarm. Okay, and it's pretty simple. If you have low cardiac output, that will actually do a fault alarm, and low cardiac output is anywhere from like 3.5 to 4 liters a minute. Okay, the normal on these are 5 to 8 liters a minute on cardiac output. Okay. Check blood pressure, make sure everything is okay, and obviously if they do a lot of vomiting and coughing, that can trigger a fault alarm. Okay, only a temporary fault alarm due to the fact that the air compressor is working too hard when he's moving his diaphragm back and forth. Okay. Switching to the backup Freedom driver, you're actually going to be able to do this. What we'll do is have one group here and one group down there. So you guys get hands on, you'll turn it on, turn it off, change back and forth so you can get a feel for it. Okay. It's relatively simple. Obviously, you take these orange caps off, which I already did. You can't plug it in with the orange caps on there, so you take out the orange caps, you put a battery in, and then you take out the dummy battery, and then you switch it back and forth. Okay? If possible, connect the backup driver into a wall power outlet. That's nice, but I don't think you need to worry about that. You should just change it over. Okay? Verify that the backup driver starts. You'll hear it start, so I don't think you need to verify because it makes a lot of noise when it turns on. You'll hear that directly. Okay? The next step is the zip ties that I were talking about. We have the patient and us put these zip ties through that little silver tab there so that it doesn't accidentally get pushed down. So we cut those zip ties and then push it down and then pull it out. Okay? Alright, and then you switch, and there's 2 people present. That's even better, but one person at a time can do it, and you basically do one at a time, as long as you do it quickly, because once you stop the airflow, it stops the pump. So it's different than a assist device where the pump stops and the patient's native heart keeps pushing blood through the LVAD. This is when it stops, it stops. So, okay. Obviously, assess the patient after the switch, check their blood pressure, make sure they're feeling okay, and notify the hospital as. And the patient has actually switched it out a couple of times. One time due to low battery alarm, and the other one was a triggered high fault alarm due to the fact that he had too much volume on board. And too much volume over time and hypertension will make this little air compressor overwork. And once it gets too much overworking, it will actually trigger the fault alarm. Okay? So we had to get his volume under control, and obviously the other time that he had to get it switched out, he let the batteries go down too far. So he learned his lesson on that one. Okay? So the patient currently is on this in the hospital, and we're hoping to have him home in the next 3 weeks up here to Boise. Okay?
How do you decrease the volume?
The only way you can decrease the volume is diuresis. Okay? So
are they carrying diuretics in their packs? Because I don't think Canyon's carrying.
They are on PO diuretics already, but no, we don't have them.
Are they instructed?
But they can have emergent IV Lasix or whatever.
But are they instructed to adjust their own volume status?
Yeah, we have him on a heart failure 2-liter
regimen,
fluid
so-
restriction
okay.
plus diuretics. So.
And he can adjust his dosing from day to day based on his change in weight?
Yeah, but
Okay.
I mean we're still working
Right.
on that with him because
Yeah.
it's hard when you're on
Yeah.
diuretics because you feel like you're in a desert and you want to have thirst for water, but you can't be going out and eating Chinese food and stuff like that. So that's a normal heart
Yeah.
failure type patient. So the patient, I forgot to tell you this in the beginning, is a 52-year-old gentleman that actually has a history of Marfan's syndrome and had a aortic arch repair for aortic aneurysm back when he was in his 30s, and then that eventually caused his to have cardiomyopathy, dilated cardiomyopathy. He then had a older LVAD that was pulsatile LVAD. He lived on that for a couple of years, then they got a heart transplant. And the heart transplant lasted him about 7 to 8 years and then was in complete rejection. So this is a therapy for complete rejection heart transplant. At this point, because he's been operated on 4 times already, he is not a transplant candidate. So he will have this for the rest of his life. And there are patients, like I said, in Europe that are on this therapy for 5 to 7 years. What usually causes the patients to die is something other than heart disease. Okay? So, okay? All right. So this is our card, our business card. I have a couple of those in my pocket, but this is our group of nurse coordinators, and our surgeon that implanted this, Dr. Craig Salesman. Dr. Dracos is our medical heart failure cardiologist, and I don't know if you guys have heard, but we work closely with St. Al's here. We actually have an outreach clinic across the street here, and we work with several of the cardiologists. Currently, we are Dr. Salesman and Dr. Dracos are going to be talking to a St. Al's Nampa cardiologist, Dr. Codina or Dr. Rowan, about taking care of this patient. So, okay. All right. So now we'll do hands-on. If you guys would like, and do you guys have any questions, concerns? You guys are kind of a quiet group. Are you just taken back because you didn't know what to expect, or? Well, when you hear it run, you'll really go, whoa, because I've been doing this actually since about '97, LVADs and total artificial heart. So, the older LVADs used to clunk and make a lot of noise, like this does. So it's not really new to me. But for somebody that is younger, growing up with a generation of small, quiet LVADs, this goes back to history, right? It's like going back in the Stone Ages, but it is what it is. It allows the patient to get out and, go about their daily lives. So, okay?
You have a change in mentation during the change out? How long it takes, obviously?
Yeah,
or is it immediate?
if the change out takes effect quickly, there's no change in mentation. But if you wanted to make him go unconscious for a few minutes, yeah, you could probably do that. But
And their kids, in their stuff at home, do they have this?
oh yeah, they actually had to take like a 100-page book test
I'm sure.
to be able to get discharged. So
Does he have family that can?
Yeah.
If you can't talk, that can help.
yeah, we require a caregiver, and so yeah. Okay, so let's pass this down.
A total eclipse of the heart.